Hey there. Um I definitely was not expecting to make this video today. I didn't really know about his passing, about the passing of George A. Romero until like a YouTuber named a good friend of mine and longtime subscriber Adam Watson. He sent me a message in one of my recent videos and he said, speaking of masterpieces, did you know that George A. Romero passed away? And I was like, no, I had no idea. Well, actually, I said something. I was like, yeah, I heard that. And may you rest in peace. I'm still processing this, you know? It definitely comes as a shock. I know he was working on producing a new the film Road of the Dead. I know he was working on that, so it's definitely a shocking turn of events, and he will absolutely 100% be missed. Yes, he had not had the best track record in terms of his films lately. I concede that fact, but that still doesn't change or make the impact that he left on the genre, the horror genre as a whole, any less powerful or any less memorable. I mean, Romero to me is on the Mount Rushmore of horror directors. Easily. He's right up there with another late great horror director in Wes Craven. For me, with horror, when it comes to horror directors, you got Carpenter, Romero, Craven, and I'm debating whether I'm putting somebody like Cronenberg or no, Toby Hooper. I think Toby Hooper should go up there. Even though Toby's had his hit and miss films as well, he's still the guy who was responsible for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, one of the best horror films ever made. So, out of that Mount Rushmore, out of that group of horror directors, and I think that's like we've already lost Craven, and now we've lost Romero. And what really saddens me the most, because I didn't know George personally, although Creepshow is a film that I grew up with. It's my all-time favorite horror film. It's one of my top favorite films of all time. It's one of the many reasons why I fell in love with the horror genre. And George was the man who helmed it. He was the man who directed it. And I'll never ever forget him for that. A lot of people remember him for Night of the Living Dead or Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead, and I love Dawn of the Dead and I love Day of the Dead. But I'll remember him for Creepshow. And I'll remember him for underrated films he did like The Dark Half or Monkey Shines. But going back to the point I was saying earlier, I'm really saddened by the fact that Romero's passing, Craven's passing, has really put things into perspective on how much these men meant to the genre of horror and how sorely they will be missed, regardless of their recent track records, because there's no one to replace them. There's no one to take up that mantle. Who today, what horror director today can say that they have directed legendary, classic, groundbreaking horror films like George A. Romero or Wes Craven or John Carpenter or Toby Hooper or even Dario Argento? Who do we have today? James Wan? Eli Roth? John Leonetti, who directed Mortal Kombat Annihilation? Who do we have? Nobody. And when you have losses like this, it really makes that point clear. Crystal clear. So clear and so stunningly obvious that it makes you take a step back, and you're just like, whoa. You're just like, holy shit. Things really are not where they should be when it comes to this genre. There was a time when you had these directors who would come one after. Wes Craven was a new addition. He was a later addition. You had people before these directors like Hitchcock and so on that had also paved the ground for these directors. But we don't have anybody like that now. And that is what is really sad for me personally. Now, I know I already did a video talking about, how I was going to do a change of plan and do some random stuff, and that's still going to be the case, but I am definitely going to be revisiting, watching, and reviewing my favorite Romero films in honor of his passing, because I just feel like I could not skip that. This is something that it's my way of being able to deal with the grief or the loss of somebody as influential to filmmaking and to the genre of horror as Romero. I haven't been this stunned and this just kind of shattered in a way since the passing of Wes Craven. It's a very similar feeling, and it sucks. A lot of us horror fans are dealing with the same feeling right now. It sucks. My heart goes out to Romero's family and his friends, and like I said, he'll definitely be missed. But like Craven, he will live on through his films, through his work. Romero will never be forgotten. His name is entrenched in the history of horror, and it just there will be no true death for him. And in a lot of ways, Romero and Craven will continue to live on forever because of their work that has continued to live on and continued to be appreciated and adored and loved by millions of fans, old and new, to this day. So when it comes to my favorite films, I'll actually mention them a little bit when I do. I'm gonna go through his career right now and give my thoughts on some of the films, my brief thoughts on some of the films. Let you guys know which one of the films I'm going to review for this channel and which ones I'm not. And then this wake of sorts will be over. This is just how I like to appreciate people, directors like this. I like to appreciate their work as a way of honoring them, as a way of my personal sort of way of accepting the loss. It is to appreciate and to focus on all the good that they brought to this world. So, and even some that wasn't so good. Nobody's perfect. So, Romero started out with Night of the Living Dead. And I'm not a big fan of the film. I personally don't like the movie, so that's why I will not be reviewing it. I just feel that would be a really inopportune and poor way to start a tribute of sorts to George A. Romero by ranting on Night of the Living Dead. Someday down the road, I might watch and give my thoughts on it more in depth. But I don't want to do that because I know there's a lot of people who love that film, and Romero himself is very proud of it, and I don't really want to do that. So I'm not going to review that film. And it's not anything against Romero. I mean, this was a groundbreaking film. But there's a lot of groundbreaking films that broke new ground for certain genres that I'm not a big fan of. But still, I appreciate and I respect Night of the Living Dead immensely for what it did for the horror genre and for zombie films. I haven't seen There's Always Vanilla. I haven't seen Season of the Witch. The Crazies, it's been a while. That might be the first one I might check out. Or might not. I think I kind of want to wait on that one because that's not really one of my favorites. I want to focus on the ones that are my favorites that he's done. So then I don't have too full of a plate. Martin, I remember liking that one quite a bit, so that'll be the first one out of the marathon that I'm going to check out. Been wanting to see it again for a while now, so and review it. So now I have that opportunity, the perfect opportunity to do so. Excuse me if I'm kind of out of it because I'm just processing all of this. It's just kind of hitting me like a ton of bricks a little bit. Dawn of the Dead, definitely going to review that, give my thoughts on that. Romero's recent passing just makes it even more infuriating that that film is not on Blu-ray, with that it didn't have new interviews with George before he passed away, that it didn't have a new commentary track before he passed away. I mean, they waited too fucking long, and that's upsetting as well. I'm hoping some company really kickstarts it and it just pushes it now, because he's no longer with us, so, you know, at least give us that. Maybe that would be a great tribute to George, is to finally get the original Dawn of the Dead on Blu-ray. With tons of features, different cuts of the film, all of that. Remastered picture quality and sound. It deserves it. Come on, it's Dawn of the fucking Dead. Night Riders I haven't seen. The running time kind of turned me off, but someday I'll check it out. You all know my opinion on Creepshow. I mean, I'm wearing a Creepshow hat. I'm wearing a Creepshow t-shirt. Creepshow is my favorite horror film. So, yeah. That I will definitely be watching that again. And I'll do a shorter review this time around. More to the point review. Just focusing on the film, not on the behind the scenes stuff and so on. Day of the Dead. Love that film. Underrated sequel. The last truly great Romero Dead film for me personally. He was one of the producers, one of the writers for Creepshow 2. I know he was heavily involved with Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, as well as Tales from the Dark Side, the TV series. Because Tales from the Dark Side, the TV series, was supposed to be Creepshow, the series, but he couldn't get the rights. I think he also directed an episode of the show. I'm a big fan of Tales from the Dark Side, so that wouldn't exist without George A. Romero's input. So he not only had an impact on horror films, but he has also had an impact on horror television, because he's responsible for Tales from the Dark Side. It's a big force behind that series. Two Evil Eyes, I know he did an anthology short in that one, along with Argento. I haven't seen that yet. The Dark Half, really like that film. I think it's really underrated. Of course, Monkey Shines. Monkey Shines, that's going to be one I'm going to watch and review. I think that's another underrated one that Romero did. And after that, there wasn't really a lot that he did that I was really a fan of. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of Bruiser. That was a shitty film, in my opinion. I mean, may George rest in peace, but that was a bad movie, and it was not a very good directing job by him either. But in comparison to some of the other films he did later on, the direct-to-video movies like Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead, it's a masterpiece. I know he did this thing called Dead Time Stories. I think he was just a producer, and you had a little acting role in some of them. I believe there's a documentary about the life and cinema of George A. Romero. I don't think it's come out yet. It was supposed to come out. It was a 2008 film. It was supposed to be released in late 2008, but it was not. It hasn't been released yet. I hope this gets released. I mean, it would be really awful, in my opinion, if this film does not get a release, especially after Romero's passing. This would be another perfect tribute to George. I mean, it was a documentary by this filmmaker, Rusty Nails. It went over his body of film work, examines a number of aspects of his work, his working method, his association with the independent Hollywood film communities. It had interviews with Dennis Hopper, Ed Harris, Stephen King, John Carpenter, Dario Argento, Danny Boyle, John Waters, Quentin Tarantino, Richard Linklater, Penn Jillette, Roger Ebert, and Tom Savini. I mean, this is something that does not deserve and should not remain lost, especially after Romero's passing. So, yeah, I mean, if you look at his career, it's a really good track record for the most part. I mean, at least from the films that I've seen, I mean, I'm not super crazy about the Crazies, but I like it. I haven't seen Night Riders, so I don't know what to say about it, but I really enjoy Martin. I love Dawn of the Dead. Creepshow is my favorite horror film. Day of the Dead is a classic. Monkey Shines is an underrated movie by Romero. The Dark Half, in my opinion, was his last truly great film, but it was a pretty great send-off. Pretty nice film to end the streak with. And the Day of the Dead sequels, I didn't really care for that much, but really, if you look at his directing, I mean, you only have Bruiser, Diary of the Dead, and Survival of the Dead, because I didn't mind Land of the Dead. I mean, I didn't hate it. I mean, I didn't love it, but I definitely didn't hate it either. So, yeah, I mean, he's had a pretty good track record. And he's had a long, illustrious career, and he's got to live the dream of making movies, and he's always wanted to do that his whole life. So George lived the dream, you know, of making the films he wanted to make. And that's just wonderful. It's amazing. You know, not very many of us get to really experience that. So, he may be gone. He definitely will never be forgotten. Like I said earlier, he will live on through his work, through his films, and through his fans. And he will never truly be dead. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for some more kind of random reviews. I might do a commentary track for RoboCop, a solo commentary track, just in time for the 30th anniversary. I don't know if I'll get it recorded by Monday. I mean, because this whole Romero news has just kind of hit me pretty hard. So I really don't know if I'm going to really be able to get it in by Monday, but we'll see. Maybe the week of the anniversary, I'll be able to get it in. Also expect some, I don't know when I'm going to get these out, but they will be out sometime. Reviews of the Indiana Jones films, because I saw the first 3 in the theater in 35mm yesterday, and it was an absolutely epic experience that I'll never forget. But anyway, yeah, just stay tuned for whatever gets uploaded, whatever gets posted. I know some of you are also curious about my thoughts on Spider-Man Homecoming. I haven't got around to seeing it yet, but when I do, expect a review whenever I'm able to get it up. But anyway, thanks for watching, and once again, rest in peace, George A. Romero. And I will see you guys later. See ya.